Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about what annoys Libra, and yes, this does apply and pertain to the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Anyway, people, first thing off is one thing I believe that really may very strongly annoy Libra is, of course, injustice and unfairness. Libra, of course, is a sign that is very fair-minded, equitable, and they are about balance. Now, Ed Koch, who was Libra rising, played a judge on People's Court. And interestingly enough, actor Harry Anderson, a Libra sun, played a judge on the NBC TV sitcom Night Court. And, I've talked previously, of course, in other videos about how I think people, celebrities, actors, what have you, they are, at least on a subconscious level, often drawn to roles that correspond with their astrological energy. And I think in these two cases, it's obviously no exception. And another good example of this, I mean, somebody that certainly abhors injustice and people getting away with crimes certainly would be John Walsh, who has a Libra moon. Now, he is obviously on a relentless crusade to capture fugitives, and he had that iconic show, America's Most Wanted, that was on for a number of years. Now he continues that crusade on The Vault, and he definitely really strongly resonates with that Libra moon energy, I believe. Now back to what annoys the zodiac sign Libra. Obviously, contentious, combative, and confrontational situations may annoy and irritate Libra strongly, and Libra may often go to great lengths to find peace and tranquility in their life. Now, I think a lot of this does have to do with the fact that Aries is the opposite sign of Libra. Libra disdains often acrimonious and angry situations. They will often be the mediators as opposed to the ones that are actually involved in a combative or contentious situation. The sign Libra, of course, can also be about compromise and reconciliation, and people that are not willing to do that, of course, is something that could strongly exasperate and annoy Libra. Aries is often too impatient to be bothered with reconciliation and compromise, so you can understand why this isn't the opposite sign. Another understanding as to why this is the opposite sign of Libra. Now, I think what may annoy Libra as well are people that have a strong propensity toward worry. Remember that Virgo often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Libra. And the 12th house in astrology can represent fears, limitations, and restrictions. And because Virgo does often fall on this house cusp, I think Libra can also be strongly averse to shyness as well, and also to being exceptionally judgmental or critical. Libra would rather be more relaxed as opposed to worrying incessantly, and also being judgmental and critical of others can really be a way that Libra might wind up making waves. And Libra really is not a sign that's really known to make waves. They will often go out of their way not to do that. Now, another thing too is that Libra can also become very annoyed with people that are overly outspoken and don't use tact and diplomacy when they speak. Again, we're going back to Aries being the opposite zodiac sign. Libra is also often about intellectual sociability and bouncing ideas off others. I find what's interesting is that the zodiac sign Taurus is in conjunct to Libra by sign. And the thing about it is, these two often can have difficulty, I believe, in a relationship situation, because Libra is really, often very sociable, and in Taurus is really more of a homebody, and it's hard to get Taurus to go anywhere. In Taurus, can also be at they're really at their worst could be rather obstinate and intransigent. And Libra is often about compromise and negotiation and listening to the other's point of view. And of course, Taurus may not often do that. So, and naturally, if they're in a relationship, adjustments can have to be made, of course. And going back to, I mean, what can annoy Libra is others not listening to their point of view and not really giving it much consideration. Now, another thing when I look at Libra, as far as another thing that might annoy them as well, is sometimes maybe even having to do things by themselves. I'm not saying I'm not saying that Libra is incapable of doing things on their own, but generally they're ones that often like to collaborate with others on projects. I mean, it's a sign of relationships, but also partnerships as well, and doing things more collaboratively and collectively rather than just by themselves. A lot of this, I think, is going back to Aries being the opposite zodiac sign. Aries is a sign that is often more self-reliant and independent. And really, another thing too is that Libra can often, I think, be annoyed if somebody tries to rush them to make a decision. I mean, Libra often might take their time and might procrastinate a little bit actually in making a decision, because they often like to weigh the pros and the cons of a situation. Aries, again, being the opposite sign, often has too much impatience to ponder something for too long, and sometimes Aries just can be downright impulsive and impetuous, and sometimes make a rash decision in which, of course, they can feel repercussions later on. I think Aries sometimes actually can often make a decision too quickly at times. But anyway, now another thing too is that they, as far as really what a Libra can become annoyed at, I think, is perhaps even being pressured to have to be super punctual and super reliable for something. Libra can look at a lot of things lightly, and I think, being on situations involving scheduled appointments and times may not always be their specialty. A lot of this, I think, you look at, again, going back to the fact that Virgo often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar natal chart for Libra. I mean, Virgo can actually epitomize punctuality and reliability, and Libra is often not about that. Virgo is a sign that's often very scrupulous about things, and being timely is, of course, like no exception. So, anyway, I think another thing, what can really annoy and aggravate Libra to no end, are people that can be overly arrogant, egotistical, and conceited. I mean, I think Libra is often one that admires modesty, can be very reticent, very humble. They're not really ones to really boast that much about things. I mean, I guess you could leave that more to Leo, probably more than any of the other zodiac signs, but that's really not up Libra's alley, so to speak. And another thing I think that can annoy Libra are people that really I mean, you talk about, going back before to what, as far as not really hearing their side of the story. Now, in really hearing their point of view on something, going perhaps to, going to the Taurus example and then the compatibility Taurus and Libra. But what's interesting is that, of course, you could even have signs that are compatible by sign, but they can have some discrepancies and still have certain difficulties. An example could be, I think, very good example of this is take Libra and Gemini. Now, Libra and Gemini by sign, I mean that, they could be very compatible. Of course, they are trine by sign. They have both air signs. They're both about intellectuality. They're very cerebral, and they both could have very good literary ability. Gemini can wind up actually finishing Libra sentences with their fast track mind and go along with what a lot Libra can say. But I think what really what could be incompatible about this and what could actually annoy Libra as a result going to Libra and Gemini is the fact that what could annoy Libra about Gemini is the fact that Gemini can often be very loquacious, even downright garrulous. They could often dominate a conversation and have difficulty letting the other person get a word in edgewise. And the thing about it is, Libra and Gemini, they can, despite both of them having a lot of common ground with their literary ability and the fact that they're both interested in concepts and ideas, the thing about it is the fact that Gemini can often be a conversation dominator, and the fact that Libra is more about equal give and take. They could think, well, Gemini, this guy or this gal or whatever, he's just basically taking over the conversation, and he's talking 80% of the time or whatever, and I'm not really able to get my thoughts out too much and put my share into the conversation, so to speak. So in that sense, that's something like that I think can annoy Libra. Libra's about balance, equality, and they're very equitable. And I think in conversations, they like to have that balance and really in that equality, so to speak. They like to be able to talk about half the time and allow the other person to talk half the time. So anyway, another thing too is that you look at Libra, another thing I think that can annoy Libra is really people that might be overly introverted and introspective. And keep in mind, there is a reason why Libra squares the zodiac sign Cancer. They are not compatible. And the thing about it is the fact really going to the Libra and Cancer. I mean, Cancer, of course, is so introverted. And Libra is often very sociable and likes to go out and mingle. And I think in a relationship situation, what could be tough too is the fact, what could annoy Cancer actually is the fact that Libra might be overly flirtatious, and that might grate on Cancer's nerves and exasperate the zodiac sign Cancer. Now, another thing too about it, what I think, you look at other things that might annoy Libra. I mean, this is a really similar example to say with Libra and Cancer, Libra and Pisces. Well, the thing about them is it's a similar thing, because if Libra is trying to connect with Pisces, well, Pisces, like Cancer, is very introverted. They're often about their isolation, and Pisces often likes to go into their, Libra is more about general relationships, where often Pisces can have their relationship with their own fantasy life and their seclusion often. And the thing about those two as well, Pisces and Libra, is also the fact that, you talk about Pisces can often, of course, they are really very sensitive, like Cancer as well. And Libra, even though they're very tactful, diplomatic, very charming, sometimes maybe they could say something that does that, Pisces can look at as really an unintentional slight and become upset, much like Cancer, I believe. So, and that could actually annoy Pisces, and Libra can become annoyed at Pisces for maybe taking things the wrong way. So anyway, and I think too, what can annoy Libra as far as Libra and Pisces, as far as a possible connection with them, is that given that both these signs are not exactly known for being decisive, Pisces can be very ambivalent. And I think a lot of this, as I've stated before in previous videos, a lot of that's attributed to them, at least by theory, and I concur and agree with this, that they're like the amalgamation of the previous 11 zodiac signs, where Libra is just generally indecisive due to the fact that they're trying to weigh the pros and cons of a situation or whatever, or in turn, or decision or what have you. So anyway, and of course that could, and I think what they can actually do to each other, unfortunately, Libra and Pisces, they can wind up exacerbating each other's indecisive, that quality of being ambivalent and indecisive. And of course, both signs can become annoyed at each other, perhaps maybe for doing this. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment 4 what annoys Libra. And stay tuned next time where I am going to actually be talking about astrology and the Natalie Wood death. So anyway, people, two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.